Welcome to Immigration Insider with your host, attorney John Nicelli. This podcast is an educational forum on how to deal with complex aspects of immigration and pitfalls to avoid. You can find this show on all the major platforms, including YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and on our website, johnnicelli.com. Now here's the host of Immigration Insider, attorney John Nicelli.
Hi, everyone. I'm John Nicelli. I'm an immigration attorney in New York City for over 42 years. And today I'm going to speak about some cases that we've handled in the past, which were quite complex, and all of which ended with the actual clients becoming permanent residents of the United States. And I want to tell these stories because there's many people that are in these similar situations. And if hopefully by listening to my podcast, you can avoid running into the same exact situation by making the same mistakes. So I want to tell you about a client that was originally born in Montenegro and was living here in the United States and was married to a U.S. citizen, and also had 4 minor U.S. citizens, all under 10 years old, that were born to their marriage. So everything was perfect with the marriage. There was absolutely no problem. So the husband, who's a U.S. citizen, as I said, filed for his wife to get a green card. So they went to a lawyer, and they told the lawyer how she entered. So she had entered using a Slovenian passport, which obviously wasn't hers because she's from Montenegro. And she was part of this smuggling ring that allowed her to be smuggled to the United States. When she arrived in the United States, she presented the Slovenian passport, and with her picture in the passport, the immigration authorities didn't realize that she was not Slovenian, and that was a photo substituted passport, and they admitted her into the United States. So she was able to pass through, went home, eventually got married, and was settled in the United States for many years. So what happened then? So the husband files for her, and they go to this lawyer, and they tell the whole story of how she entered the United States. And the lawyer said, no, don't tell him that. It could be a big problem because then you probably need a waiver and all kinds of problems. So we don't want to do that. So it's best to say that you just entered through Canada. But you flew to Canada and you crossed the Canadian border into the United States in upstate New York. So that's exactly what they did. They put on all the papers, that she entered through the Canadian border, she had flown to Canada and all this stuff. P.S. To make a long story short, she finally gets a interview at the American Embassy, which was in Belgrade. So when she goes to the interview, one of the first questions they ask is, how did you arrive in the United States? So she said, I flew to Canada. And so when they saw she said she flew to Canada, they wanted to know more information about if it was really true, because there were a few cases like this that had been handled in Belgrade with kind of the same exact situation. So they kind of had their doubts as to what was going on. So they asked her about Canada. So they said, well, how did you get from where? First of all, where did the plane land? So she said Toronto. And they asked her what day it was, when time of the year it was, the whole works. So after all that, then they asked her, how did you get from Toronto to the U.S. border? She said, I walked. And how long did it take? Well, approximately 2 hours. Well, that's impossible because it's more than 50 miles. So they knew she was lying right there. So then they asked her, well, when you went to the United States, where did you enter? She says, well, in New York. So she says, okay, well, what bridge did you cross? They mentioned the names of the bridges, Rainbow Bridge, Peace Bridge, Lewiston Bridge. She had no idea what they were talking about. So when they realized that for sure that she was lying, she was denied a visa. So that's when I got a call from the husband and said, my wife, he tells me the whole situation. Now my wife's stuck in Belgrade. She's going back to Montenegro. So what could we do? I said, well, your wife has a big problem. She's going to need a waiver for misrepresentation because she lied on all the forms. And even though it was the lawyer who filled out the forms, she signed them. So she's held responsible for lying. And then to make it even worse, she then lied to the embassy, the consular officials, who asked her the questions about how she arrived in the United States and what the circumstances were regarding her arrival. So at that point, we had to file what you call a waiver for misrepresentation, which we filed. And that waiver is based on hardship to the spouse. So we had to demonstrate how difficult his life had become without his wife, because he had 4 minor children. And the man had to work in order to support the kids. So it was really, really, really terrible. It upset her life, her children's lives, his life, everyone's life, the whole family's lives, because then other family members had to come and take care of the kids when he went to work. There was problems getting kids to school on time. There's many, many issues. It was very, very unfortunate. But fortunately, after maybe a year, year and a half to 2 years, I would say, we had the case approved. And once the case was approved, she was got her immigrant visa, which was her green card. She was allowed to enter the United States and is now living in the United States here with her children and her husband, and everything is absolutely fine. She's very grateful for what we did, and can't believe that it actually happened, because they gave her such a hard time at the embassy after they realized she had lied. They didn't even want to speak to her anymore. So it was a pretty frightening experience. So my message to everyone today is, if you're in a similar situation and you came to the United States with a photo substituted passport, do not ever, ever lie to a consular official. Because if you lie to a consular official, you're not going to get the visa once they find out what's going on. Because often, many, many times, they've handled similar situations in the past, and they pretty much expect that you'll be lying and trick you to admit certain things, and then obviously you don't know the answers, and there you go, and you'll just be denied the visa. So that was one case, and it's actually, I've had a few of these cases from Montenegro with the exact situation. They all came in with either German, Austrian, or Slovenian passports. Same exact story. They were told that they entered through Canada, all lied, all got stuck. I had one man, he came to me, he had been stuck there about 3 or 4 years before they even called me, and I was able to get him back after about a year or two. And also, he was married to a U.S. citizen, a similar situation. And again, lied to the embassy officials, and you just don't do things like that. There's another case which we recently handled, very recently, just within the last few weeks, where this lady is a Brazilian citizen who's married to a United States citizen. So she's been living here for a number of years. So the issue is how she arrived and what happened. So when she was living in Brazil, long before she met her husband and got married, she had seen this ad about people advertising for jobs in the United States. So she answered the ad, and she met with the people who had presented, this ad in the newspaper. And the ad was a promise for work in the United States. She was going to work in a spa here, and guaranteed work, and guaranteed to work to get to the United States. So what it involved was that she had to pay $23,000 to come to the United States, and they would allow her to pay a portion of the money, but after she came here, she would be charged $500 a week in interest until the debt was fully paid. And the deal was that she had to come to the United States, and after she came, she would be given an airport, given a passport which they presented to her, and she used that passport to come to the United States, which was a photo substituted passport, and she was given a Portuguese passport, because the Portuguese citizens have visa waivers, so they don't have to apply for a visa to come to the United States. So they made up this fake passport with her name and her picture on it, and she too came to the United States and was admitted. So after she was admitted, I guess the next day, she went to the spa, and when she got to the spa, she was asking questions because she didn't like what she was seeing. And it turned out she saw a lot of men walking in and out, and she was wondering what's going on with all these women half naked. So she realized that it was a brothel. And so they told her, well, this is the deal. You came here, we brought you here. She said, well, I don't want any part of this. But they were threatening her that she couldn't leave and all that kind of stuff. Fortunately, just fortunately for her, the police came and had made a raid on the brothel. Apparently someone had reported them, and they arrested all the employees that were there. She too was arrested. When she explained what had happened, and it showed her documents how she arrived and all that kind of stuff, And she said, I know nothing about this. I just came from Brazil. She didn't even speak English. They actually dismissed the charges, and then she was free to go. So what happened then, the problem is that she still had her passport. When they came to me, they wanted to know, well, how can I become a resident of the United States, after having been arrested and going through this whole situation? And as I said, she was married to a U.S. citizen. So we were able to file a waiver, again, for misrepresentation. And that waiver was based on hardship to her spouse. The case was filed in Newark. It was processed. It took them about maybe 8 or 9 months to approve the waiver. And the waiver is based on many, many factors showing how the husband's life is affected by if she was to be deported back to Brazil, because he was Portuguese, he wasn't Brazilian, had never lived in Brazil. So it would have a very negative effect on his life. What would happen to his job, his pension, his insurance, everything that they had together, many, many things. And based on the hardship that we were able to present, fortunately, she too was approved after the waiver was approved, and she too became a permanent resident of the United States. And she too was extremely grateful for everything that we did for her, and thanked me, profusely for everything. And I was happy that all that worked out. I had another case I wanted to speak about today. And this case was a very tragic situation, actually. It involved a Pakistani citizen who was only 19 years old. She had been brought to the United States when she was 6 years old. Her parents came here with visas. They had lived in England for a while, so they had visa waivers, actually. And she had a British passport. So when she came to the United States, she was 6 years old. Her mother enrolled her in school. They had no intention of returning back to England or going back to Pakistan. So they just stayed here, and life went on. Unfortunately, she was here illegally all these years, even though she spoke perfect English. She went to school here, and everything was as normal as can be, except for her status. So one day she decided, her and a boyfriend, that they were going to, and the boyfriend was an American citizen she's been seeing for a while, and they decided that they wanted to go on vacation. So they wanted to go to St. Thomas. But she knew she couldn't go to St. Thomas if she didn't have a green card or she wasn't an American citizen. So she called the airlines, and she asked the airlines, if the airline personnel, what does she need to travel to St. Thomas? So they said, well, all you really need is your passport and your either a green card or your driver's license. Because at that time, which was around 2021, I would say, no, around 2002, rather, 2003, sorry. They told at that time the restrictions were a lot easier than they are now. So she travels to St. Thomas, gets into St. Thomas, has no problem at all. They go on their short vacation. She's coming back. Well, in St. Thomas, unknown to her, they have what you call pre-flight inspection. Pre-flight inspection means that U.S. immigration officials from the Customs and Border Protection actually have offices there. And when you're coming back to the States, they actually inspect you. So they verify who you are, that you're legitimately who you are. It's not a fake passport or anything like that. And you're allowed to enter the United States once everything checks out. So when they put her Pakistani passport in, they realize, wait, lady, you don't have a visa to be here. How do you come to St. Thomas? How did you even get to the United States? So explained the story, says, well, I'm sorry, you're illegal and I can't let you go back. So at 19 years old, they detained her. So they detained her in St. Thomas. So unfortunately, St. Thomas doesn't have a long-term detention center. So she was there, I think, overnight, I believe. And then from there, they sent her to Arecibo, Puerto Rico, where immigration has a detention facility. So she was in the prison there, and that's when I got the call. And her mother called me and says, my daughter's stuck. She's in the prison in Arecibo. What do we do? So at that point in time, what I did is I filed for asylum for her immediately, because her father was a very devout Muslim who had left the family and went back to Pakistan, because the father left because he told his wife, he says, you became too American. You don't want to follow our religious beliefs anymore, and you've convinced the children not to do that. So I'm just leaving, and you guys can stay here. I want nothing to do with you. So the problem is that if she was deported back to Pakistan, her father would do what they call an honor killing, where if the family member has disobeyed or dishonored the parent or grandparent or something like that, they actually will get the family together and they will stone the people to death. And this is going on today in 2024, believe it or not. So she was very fearful that if she went back, her father would have her killed because she dishonored her father by not adhering to his religious beliefs and being so-called Americanized, is what he said. And so she was deathly fearful. So after she was detained and I filed for asylum, I wanted her to be released as soon as possible. But unfortunately, because she was from Pakistan, immigration had this policy that she had to be detained at least 45 days. So I said, what do you mean 45 days? She's not a terrorist. She's not a threat to anyone. She hasn't been to Pakistan since she's 6 years old. What is going on here? So finally, I got somebody to come to their senses in immigration. It was quite difficult. And they finally released her. But before they released her, what had happened was they had a hurricane in Puerto Rico. So as a result of the hurricane, the facility in Arecibo, which is probably about 2 hours out of San Juan, had to close because it wasn't hurricane proof. So they transferred all of the prisoners from Arecibo, all the immigration prisoners, to the federal detention center, which was in San Juan. So when they put her in San Juan, they put her in with some hardened felon at 19 years old who had been in jail for I don't know how long on all kinds of criminal charges. So she was scared to death for what had happened. So she was there for a couple of days until the hurricane passed, and then they moved her back to Arecibo. And then shortly thereafter, I was able to get her released. And once I got her released, she eventually got married to her U.S. citizen boyfriend, and she was able to get a green card, and we got her a green card. And I'm happy to say she now has 2 children, and she's happily married, and can't thank me enough for saving her life because her and her mother was totally distressed. I can't even describe in words how distressed her mom was over the situation with her fear of being deported to Pakistan back to her father, where her father would undoubtedly would have had her stoned to death. It's very unfortunate, but they do that all the time. They also do another thing they do in Pakistan is they throw acid on them. They burn them with acid, and they let them suffer until they die. It's really, really horrible, but unfortunately still going on in 2024. And you can verify that by reading some of the country reports about Pakistan published by the U.S. State Department. So my most honest opinion to everyone is never lie ever to a consular official. Do not lie in any immigration documents that you ever have to file, because you'd be surprised what immigration knows. When they do background checks with the FBI, they come up with stuff sometimes that you would never dream that they would. Sometimes people hide the fact that they've been arrested somewhere. They say, oh, I forgot about it. But no, that's not the case at all. And that's another thing I wanted to tell you is about, you got to be very careful when you go overseas and you have an interview anywhere in the world, actually. But one of the very, very tough consulates in the world to deal with, in fact, I would say the 2 worst or the most difficult to deal with are in Santo Domingo in the Dominican Republic and Ciudad Juarez in Mexico. And we had 2 clients. We have 2 clients currently that had interviews in Ciudad Juarez, Mexico. These clients had other attorneys, and I gotten their cases after they got stuck. So the one man, he had a DUI conviction from about 15 years ago. So he went to, before you go to your appointment, you have to have a medical exam. So when he goes to see the doctor asks him, because they want to check their psychological well-being as well. So the doctor asks him, he says, I see you have a drunk driving conviction for 15 years ago. So he says, yes, doctor, it was a mistake. I was out drinking with my friends, and it was definitely a mistake. I don't drink anymore, and I haven't drank in I don't know how many years, and I have no desire to drink. So the doctor says, okay, let me ask you something. The doctor was very nice to him. He said, let me ask you something, though. If we leave today after I'm closed, after I finish my hours. He says, if I give you a call and, the two of us just go talk and, about today and just, go to the bar and have a few drinks, would you join me? He says, well, doctor, if you ask me to join me, of course I'll join. Absolutely. So, okay. So what does the doctor do? He reports to the council official that this man is alcohol dependent because he was still willing to go to drink after he said he hadn't drunk in I don't know how many years. So they denied the visa. So we now had to send him to Alcoholics Anonymous classes, and he should be coming back shortly because he had to stay there at least 1 year doing therapy and to verify he's no longer alcohol dependent. So that's why you got to be very careful when you go overseas. Another one, which is becoming more and more common, we had another case, there's people from Pennsylvania, and they came in to see me. The wife came in to see me. Says, my husband's stuck in Mexico. I said, well, why is he stuck in Mexico? She says, I don't know. She says, they told me he was using marijuana, but marijuana is legal. So what happened was that he went for his medical exam, and when he did the blood test, they realized he had marijuana in his system. So the doctor told him, you have marijuana in your system, so the visa is going to be denied because marijuana is legal in many states, but it's still not legal in the federal jurisdiction of the federal law. So as a result, you can't have marijuana in your system when you go for a medical appointment and you want to become an immigrant and come to the United States. So he too has to go, and he's been going to classes for detox classes to show that he's not dependent on marijuana. He cannot use marijuana for at least 1 year before he can come back to the United States. So that's where he's at right now. And both of those people should be coming back soon because they have attended their classes. So they've been so-called rehabilitated and not dependent on alcohol or drugs. And I think that's pretty much it for today. So the word is, be honest. Don't lie to your lawyer. Don't lie to the council official. Don't lie to immigration. And then hopefully everything will be okay. Always be upfront in anything that you do. And under the new law, there's also a new law I want to talk about for 5 minutes, where President Biden signed a bill a few weeks ago that if you're married to a U.S. citizen, as of June 17, 2024, and you've been in the United States physically present at least 10 years, and you have no criminal record, and you entered it illegally, you can now file for what they call parole in place, and then file for your U.S. residence by filing adjustment of status. Those cases are all pending right now. Nothing could be filed until the earliest April 19th. There are no final regulations published yet. I expect they will be published in the next 2 weeks. But if you are eligible, that you meet that criteria, I would suggest accumulating as many documents as you have to show you've been physically present for 10 years. And when it comes time to file, which is probably going to be, they say August 19th, but that could be delayed. We don't know for sure. But if it is, be ready. And one of the things they're going to require is those 10 years physical presence and the marriage certificate. Once you have that, you're going to get what they call parole in place. We don't know how long it's going to take. Parole in place for military families is a similar program, but it's taking at least 1 year now to do parole in place here in New York City. In New Jersey, it takes about the same. Some states, they're a little shorter periods of time. Some are a little longer. But that's for military families. So if they do it the same way they're doing the new law with parole in place, I would expect the amount of applications they're going to have, I expect it will take also 1 year. So to everyone, lots of good luck and nice to speak with everyone today. And if you have a problem with immigration of any kind, I'm here 42 years doing immigration and only immigration. Please feel free to call me for a consultation, 212-227-8020. Or if you want, you can go to my website, john@johnnicelli.com. My email is john@johnnicelli.com, or just johnnicelli.com is my website. All right? Good to see you all, and the best of luck. Thank you.
You've been tuning into Immigration Insider with your host, attorney John Nicelli. You can find this show on all the major platforms, including YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and on our website, johnnicelli.com. Thank you for your positive reviews, comments, questions, and for sharing this show with others.